Hello,
Well,
everyone.
yeah, welcome everyone. This is T Brews and Data Views, episode 4, and today we got a special guest today, Pete Hersh. But I guess quick question first, Pete. What are you drinking?
I got an iced tea. It's a green tea that my wife did a sun tea this weekend, and so yeah, that's what I'm drinking. How
Nice.
about you?
Yeah, what about you, love?
I got my standard Earl Grey in here. It just smells nice, so
And then I decided to go a little bit unique based off the data set we sent Pete, and I am drinking a beer, specifically a Hefeweizen. I'm starting a parental leave tomorrow, so this is my last meeting of the day, so it's okay.
nice.
Um, so with that, Pete, do you want to share your screen and tell us about the data set we sent you?
Yeah, you didn't tell me I could drink beer on this.
I know. I wanted the unique capability of that, I guess.
Let's see. Share. Mm,
It's also like 95, so I'm glad I have like the hot tea in the garage that's already hot.
Yeah, I'm excited to see some sweat slowly drip.
all right. Are you seeing this okay?
Yes, yes, we are.
Okay, yeah. Sorry, it took me a second there to share. So, the data set we're looking at is from Kaggle. And if you're not familiar, this is a data repository where they do competitions and they have some free data sets. And the one you guys sent me was beer reviews. So, pretty appropriate that Clovis is drinking a beer. Um, yeah, and so there's about 1.5 million rows of beer reviews. So people have gone to this website called Beer Advocate and they drink a beer and then they rate it 1 through 5. And we're taking a look at that data. And I made a couple of visualizations and we're going to dig into it with Jump. You guys got any questions about the data set before I get going?
It's kind of like a lot of rows though, the 1.5 million. I I guess one of my questions is like, would it have like any issues like doing all that type of data in there?
Uh, it didn't have any problems for me. So first you download it and it comes as a CSV file. And then if you try to open that in Excel, it limits how many you can bring in. But when I brought it into Jump, no problem.
Nice. And there wasn't any sort of lag or speed issues.
Nope, not that I've seen yet. I haven't tried to run like a neural network or anything on that, but the graphs and visuals I made, no lagging, works pretty well.
Perfect. Yeah, I'm excited. Let's jump in. Pun intended.
Haha. All right, so here is the data set. So you can see here we got a little over 1.5 million rows of data. Each one of these rows is a specific beer and a brewery, and that brewery and beer have a, a review associated with it. So if I scan over here, you can see there's an overall review, a rating, and just some other information about that specific review, like what time it happened and things like that. So I think the first thing I did here is I just wanted to take a look at how many reviews came from each brewery, and then the average beer rating that we saw from all of the reviews, and then also looked at how much alcohol by volume, so the ABV. Clovis, do you know how much alcohol in your beer you're drinking right now?
Yes, I believe it is 5.6. So not
Okay,
crazy high, pretty mellow.
yeah, you're below our median for this whole review and mean. So you're drinking low alcohol content before your parental leave there. So
Yeah.
pretty good.
I'm still technically on the clock in terms of work, so got to be respectful.
There you go.
Good luck, Sunday.
Lunch beers, yes. And then I noticed these are kind of older reviews. So Most of them took place from like 2006 to 2015. So it's not the newest reviews. So if you've got a new beer that you really like, it might not be in this data set.
I do have a question for you.
Yeah.
Have you ever written a review in Beer Advocate? Is there any chance that one of your reviews is in this data set?
This isn't the app I use. I use something called Untapped.
That's a great one too.
Yeah, but I definitely look at these reviews. Like if I want to know what's the best beer in Colorado, that would be a place I would look. So yeah.
Fair enough.
Does this make sense? You guys got any questions on this?
No, so far so good.
Okay, so what do you guys think is the most reviewed brewery? You got any guesses? Now, these are mostly craft brew and micro brews, so it won't be Anheuser-Busch. I'll give you that as a hint. You guys got any hints it's a big craft brewer?
Is it in California? Can you give me that hint?
Nope, it's not. It's on the East Coast.
Oh.
No idea then.
Is it a place near Boston called Treehouse?
It's a place in Boston, but it's not called Treehouse.
I give up.
It's Boston Brewing Company. So they make Sam Adams. So that's the biggest. So I found that kind of interesting that it's a craft beer. And keep in mind, this is from 2015 older. So Boston Brewing Company has been around for a long time, and maybe your favorite brewery hasn't been around as long. So yeah, all right, cool. So let's look at some of the graphs I built here. So I thought like a good question would be, well, what are the most popular styles of beer? Like what beer types are getting the best reviews and the most reviews? So I made a quick graph here, and this is kind of noisy. I was just looking at all of the reviews, and I added a little filter so we could kind of see it on one page here, but I was looking at breweries that had at least 1,000 reviews and that their average review for the brewery was between 4 and 5. So these are better reviewed beers. And so it kind of was surprising to me. There was two styles of beer that I haven't drank a lot of. I don't even know what a kvass is. And I have had this goes before. So that's kind of like a wild ale that they're not super common. So I thought that was interesting that those were two of the highest rated beers. You guys got any questions on this?
No, so I wonder if like the uniqueness of it brings up the score. I would have definitely thought like an IPA or stout, some version of those would be near the top, since those are like the types of beers you see at every brewery.
Yeah, and you can see IPA is the most reviews overall. And I set this up so we can dig in a little more, but Love, you got any thoughts on this?
No, yeah, I was just curious about there's a few like prominent peaks in that. So I'm guessing those are the IPAs because the y-axis review overall.
Yeah, right. So this is the total number of reviews by beer style. So you can see IPA right here and double IPA are these big peaks. There's like a Belgian strong ale is another one. So the ones to the very left of the graph here are the ones that have good reviews, and then the ones that are reviewed most often. So like Clovis, to your point there, IPAs are by far and away the most reviewed beer, and they're towards the top of the highest average score too. And then you can see on the other end, like low alcohol beers get very bad reviews, and there's not very many of them.
They are getting a little bit better, though, I have to say. I've tried a few, but
I agree.
Doesn't compare.
Yeah, I mean, I think in 2015 they had a long ways to go, and now they're way better. I've definitely had some of these low alcohol, no alcohol beers that are better than they were. Okay, so any other questions before we move on?
I'm ready to see where you're
Okay.
taking us next.
Okay. So let's say what type of beer do you? I guess you're drinking a Hefeweizen. Do you want to dig into that, or are you interested in IPAs? It sounds like you had an interest in IPAs. Is there a beer type you want to look at in more detail?
Yeah, let's go IPAs. Let's go.
Okay, so I'm gonna hover over here, and you'll see shortly that a well, the lag is now showing up. All right, so I've put in a hover label in here. So I know Lovey covered this in a previous episode you guys did on how to do this. But what this does now is it pops up, and it's going to now bring up the breweries that brewed those IPAs. So I'm going to click on that, and we'll see here. This is again IPAs from those more popular breweries. So they had over 1,000 reviews, and they were between 4 and 5. And so these are IPAs that came from the breweries made IPAs, and they were a popular brewer with a good score overall.
Hey, I see there's Russian River Brewing Company. That's kind of funny because Clovis and I used to live in the town where they had Russian River.
Santa Rosa, yeah. I'm seeing lots of California ones, actually. Yeah, Russian River, Stone, Ballast Point, Bear Republic. Yeah, this is exciting.
Yeah. So, and I mean, I think, again, this goes back to 2015. So if your favorite brewery's not in here, maybe it's a newer brewery or it didn't have a lot of reviews back in the day. But I do think, Russian River has consistently been one of the top brewers. And since you brought that up, Lovey, let's take a look at Russian River. So why don't we hover over that one? And so now I'm going to look at the beers that Russian River brewed that were IPAs.
I wonder if it's that Pliny the Younger, which was like their legendary beer. Maybe it's
that's a triple.
So
IPA.
that is actually a triple, so it wouldn't fall in this one. But yeah, good point. So Pliny the Elder and Pliny the Younger are two of their most popular ones, and had we gone down that route of double IPA or triple IPA, we might have found them. But these are just standard IPAs, and I know Blind Pig is pretty popular. That's one that I've had before. A couple of these I've never heard of, so maybe they're less well distributed, but you can kind of see the best rated IPA from Russian River down to the worst. Like if you're going to go to all the trouble to find Russian River, don't get Bravo, it looks like.
Yeah. Get the registration ale. Looks like number 1. I don't think I've had that one. So
I haven't either. And again, this is maybe
2015.
Yeah, right. 7, 8, 9 years old now. So yeah.
It's kind of cool though, Pete. It's like you had the entire list of all the beers, and then you kind of dove into a single beer, found single breweries, and then the types of beers that brewery makes, and then like
exactly. Yeah. So the last thing I wanted to do, so let's take Blind Pig because it's one I've had before, and let's just hover on that. So I just wanted to see over time what the reviews of Blind Pig look like. Like, is it getting better reviews over time or sort of worse reviews over time? And you can kind of see the trend as it go. It started out really highly rated when the first reviews came out in 2008, and then it really dipped, and it kind of went like that. And I can actually, turn on the control panel and maybe add a trend line to this, and you can kind of see how it trends. Not a ton of correlation there, but you can kind of see that, hey, it's maybe trending a little down, and maybe that is significant. So maybe Blind Pig was really good, and it's gotten worse, or maybe people just aren't reviewing it as well as they did at the start. So I thought that was kind of interesting.
Yeah, I could see a factor where at the beginning it was more unique and it didn't have as much competition. And, the craft beer scene has gone up quite a bit. So maybe more competition and harder to get those 5 stars or
yeah,
whatnot.
Definitely. All right. Any thoughts on this before we move on? I got a couple other graphs I was going to show on just what was interesting, I thought.
No, this has been great. I'll hand it over to you, Love. I think you had a question, maybe.
No questions on my end. Let's see some other cool graphs.
All right, let's shut these ones for now and let's look at the. So I just looked. You kind of saw this, but I wanted to break it out. Just the most popular breweries. So these were. I filtered out all the breweries that had under 50 reviews because, hey, that could be my buddy Jeff brewing beer in his basement. And there's 4 of us that really liked his beer, and we went on to Beer Advocate, and he ended up with a 5 out of 5. But I thought this was interesting because a lot of these I hadn't heard of. I mean, so Russian River, Live Oak, that's in Austin. You know, there's a couple of these I've had before, but Alchemist I've heard of, but some of these are smaller breweries that really scored well. So I thought this was kind of an interesting way to look at just a few breweries that are maybe smaller that you have or haven't heard of, like Peg's Cantina and Brewpub. Never heard of that one before.
Question, how would you pronounce the second name there?
I don't even want to try.
Fair enough. And I forget, Beer Advocate, it doesn't need to be in the U.S. These could be European breweries, right? Right,
and I would guess by like this spelling and that one and maybe that one that those are not in the U.S. Okay. I can't say that for sure, but you know, the Brasserie de Roquefort, that sounds French to me. So Clovis, you speak better French than I do. What?
Yeah, no, I think it's like in a nice cheese region, so I wouldn't be surprised.
Nice. All right. Any questions on this? This makes sense to you guys?
Yeah. So I'm looking, and I see that there's 2 alchemists. There's the Alchemist, and then there's the Alchemist Pub and Brewery. And when I see this, I would think like, you know, maybe I would want to group those together since it's probably the same beers.
Yeah, so it's really interesting because I sorted beers for Great American Beer Fest for a couple years, and they're very particular, the breweries, about who actually brews it. So the Alchemist has a main production facility, but they also have a pub. So the pub is separate from the brewery because it brews it at the pub. But you're right, Clovis. I think if I was doing the analysis of this and I wanted to dig in, I'd probably, you know, select everything from Alchemist and the Alchemist Pub and, you know, recode that and group it together. So to give you an example, I can select both of those there and then go back over here and go to my brewery name. And I have those 889 reviews. And then I could just go to columns and recode, and then I could group those together. So I could either do a search here and look for Alchemist or do something like that, right? So I could either group them together and make a new column with those grouped together, or I could, code over this original one if I wanted to. So, yeah.
Yeah, awesome. Yeah, thanks for showing that. I'm always a huge fan of Recode. It really makes any sort of data cleanup quite easy. So,
yeah.
Thank you for deviating off the topic to show that.
No problem.
I'll let you go back to your graphs.
Okay. All right. So let's go on to another one. So I had a couple other things I wanted to look at, and one was ABV. And so I think this came up as one of the things that you often see if you don't do any kind of filtering. So let's run this before I do that. So here I did a graph of the average review, and I sort of had binned my ABV. So like sort of a low alcohol, 3 to 5%, my mid alcohol, kind of higher alcohol. And one thing I noticed is the 4s and 5s tend to increase the more alcohol in the beer. So I thought that was kind of interesting. So you can kind of see they're colored low to high here. So once you get up to 11 to 13%, like barley wine, really heavy beers, almost 9% of those reviews are 5s. So people really like the high ABV stuff.
Makes sense. They like the effect.
Exactly. It's like, oh, this is great, especially if it's your second one, right?
Yeah.
This is a very cool graph because one, I'm a big fan of contingency plots, and like it's really cool seeing the trend between the different categories of alcohol content and like how much the proportion of a review is increasing or decreasing.
Yeah. And then I have a question here in terms of the x-axis. Did you bin it from the axis, or did you create a binning column in the table to get it done?
Yeah, so I created a binning column in the table. So why don't I just show how I did that so you guys can see it. So here's my bin column, and here is the column I used to bin. And so what I did is I went through and I just did a fast formula, and it is under the distributional and custom binning. And then I just went through and I said, you know what, I want equal bins. I want to start at 1, and I want the width to be 2. And you can see here what a mess this is as well. So you can see that there is some beers that are way up there in alcohol content, right? Like this is probably a data entry error.
Yeah.
So like, yeah, I mean, I think anything above maybe 20% or 23% would probably not even qualify as a beer. And if you're getting up around, 50, 60%, that's probably just like, you can see there's one way out here that's like 57%. So I would say anything above 30 is not, something's wrong there, right? So I'd probably go through and exclude that, and I'll show that. So all I did here is hit OK, and then I created that binning column, and you can see this one's just like the one I had there. And then let's take a look at how I might get rid of those really high ABVs. If I was looking at that, I might do like a quick data filter here, just add that ABV and say, hey, you know what, anything above, say, 23 is not actually a beer. And then I'm going to say, you know what, I'm going to show and include. And so I've excluded those 68,000 reviews where it was above 23%.
Nice. Yeah, I got to think like the ones that are like in the 50s or 60s, probably they forgot to put the decimal there.
That's right. Like it came over from Europe and they had a comma. And so, yeah.
Something like that. That would
Yeah.
make sense.
Yeah. All right.
That's great.
Any questions on this one before we move on here?
Love?
No, not this one. I was gonna say for the high volume of beers is probably you might exclude all the Four Locos that way.
Well, yeah. I don't know if that counts as a beer. But maybe someone could put that in Beer Advocate. Who knows? I'm good too, Pete.
All right. Okay, let's look at the last one I had here. So we have a colleague who drinks a lot of beer and reviews it named Dieter. And I don't know if this is one of him. I think he uses Untapped. But I wanted to look at the people who have had the most reviews. So keep in mind, this was basically a 9-year period. And I'm looking at the people who had at least 2,000 reviews. So they drank 2,000 different beers and made a review of these 2,000 different beers, at least. There was one up to 5,000.
That's
reviews.
commitment. That is
commitment, right? And maybe I'm wrong, but I think, if I got a 6-pack of beer, I don't think I would do 6 separate reviews. So I think this is probably just a fraction of the beer they actually drank.
So maybe a slight sign of alcoholism is what you're
Yes.
telling me.
But I also thought it was interesting. So, right, like out of these guys, like I call them guys, people. It could be girls, guys, whoever, that have reviewed. There was, one here that was pretty generous, and their average score of all their beer reviews was 4.25, and all the way down to this person here, who I'm like, maybe they don't actually like beer, but they reviewed 2,000 beers, or maybe they're just very picky, So I thought that was interesting. What's that?
Like that critic from Ratatouille, but for beers,
Yeah, exactly. So let's look at this very particular reviewer here and see what their reviews look like. So I put in that hover label again, and so I did it by brewery first, and you can see that some of these breweries they really don't like, like their average reviews are around 1, and then they have all the way up to a couple that got 4.5. And that doesn't mean that no beer got a 5. Like, this is the average per brewery, but no brewery made all 5-star beers according to this person. So I think, that's helpful. Like, getting a 5-star review sometimes isn't super useful. So yeah,
at least it shows like this particular like reviewer has like a range in their in how they rate beers. Like they have beers that they think are particularly terrible and some that are really good.
Yeah,
right.
So maybe they're more trustworthy.
Exactly.
This is the person you go by.
Yeah, maybe you go to the most discerning and you go, okay, well, what's a brewer or a beer they really like, and you can hover over one of these and go, okay, well, they really like now pop this up and so we can look. They really like the brewery Hill Farmstead Brewery, and the 2 beers they got from there both got 4.5. So that's a pretty good review for this person. So yeah.
Nice. And yeah, I see like the possibilities could be really endless with those hover graphs, because the next question could be like, oh, I wonder what is the ABV of Arthur, or I wonder what is the ABV of Vera May. And you could just kind of continue in a loop to really explore this.
And one way to do that, that's a good point here, is I can actually turn on that label and just say, hey, what is the ABV of those 2? So now if I hover over this, my beer ABV there is 6, and they're both 6. So
okay.
Yeah, so like kind of middle of the road.
Yeah, like right near your median that you had at the beginning.
Yeah.
I think it was like 6 or 7. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Perfect. So yeah, he doesn't like them. Well, we don't know his full range, but it seems like he likes that 6 range, at least from this brewery.
There you go. Yeah.
This has been great. Love, do you have any last questions here?
No. This is very interesting. I do gotta say we are probably getting a little bit close to like 30 minutes.
Okay, so yeah, maybe we end it here to not overwhelm our viewers.
Yes, too much beer talk and too much beer drinking,
But yeah, Pete, thank you for going over this visual data exploration in Jump with Beer Advocate, and we'll have to have you again in a future date.
Our first guest. This is great.
Yeah, thanks guys. Thanks for having me. It was lots of fun to play around with this data set, so thanks for finding a fun one.
Perfect. Yeah, no, I'm glad you liked it. And so I'll stop the recording here and have a great rest of your afternoon, everyone. Okay. Bye.